This is the Ancient and Medieval History lecture for Wednesday, the 28th, 27th, 27th of April. 2022. We start with a poem by Rudyard Kipling. Now, there are a couple of concepts that I alluded to yesterday that I want you to have because they're vocab. One is Weregeld. And the other is Danegeld. Weregeld and Danegeld. Weregeld is spelled W-E-R-E-G-E-L-D, and Danegeld, D-A-N-E-G-E-L-D. Weregeld and Danegeld. There we go. Weregeld is the blood price that every man, woman, and child has. The justice of Scandinavia and of the Germanic people. This is also the people who conquered Rome, the Germans and the Goths, and the Anglo-Saxons. They all said that every person has a Weregeld, a blood price. And that means if you have to kill someone, or if you fight a duel with someone and they die, or if you're involved with someone and they get killed by accident, but especially if you have to fight someone for honor, what you have to do to avoid, or try to avoid, a blood feud is pay the family the blood price, or the Weregeld of the person that you killed. Now, noblemen were worth more than commoners, who were worth more than servants, who were worth more than slaves. The Weregeld was based on the wealth that they would have brought into the family had they lived, on their status. If you were willing to pay the Weregeld, you were doing what you were supposed to do. So yesterday in the duel, you saw the older blonde guy kill the tall younger guy. Is that the uniform?
I think I can.
Thank you. And the hoodie as well. Not you. You can take the sweater off, yes. If there was somebody behind you with a hoodie. The idea is he tosses the coin purse to the family, to the prince's men who were behind the tall young guy. Take care of your friend. He was a brave man. The idea of a Weregeld, of a blood price, was you were doing your best to compensate for what you had to do. Now, to a modern person, you're putting a price on a human life? Yep, absolutely. That's precisely what they're doing. in order to avoid ongoing blood feuds. Weregeld ain't cheap. Weregeld is expensive. You're paying for a human life. But in doing so, you might prevent the needs of honor, motivating everyone related to the guy you just killed to come after you and your relatives. Blood feuds are bad for everyone. Now, do you have to accept? No. You don't have to accept the Weregeld. You can spurn it. You don't keep it, by the way, if you spurn it. You give it back. And that's a sign that you're going after them. That blood calls out for blood. So you see, in the Germanic and Gothic and Viking lands, we have stepped back in stages in the rule of law. From the law code, or the law of the king, to the law of family. Blood calls out for blood. And there's an old Icelandic saying that applies to this. Never kill twice in the same family. Never kill twice in the same family. If you have to kill once, it can happen. The family will probably accept your Weregeld. But if you have to kill twice in the same family, that doesn't look like bad luck. That looks like enemy action. And they're going to see it as such. They're probably not going to accept your Weregeld. And then you've got a family feud with blood and death and the intent to wipe the other family from the face of the earth until peace can be arranged. Meanwhile, everyone in society that has anything to do with either family is going to get caught up in this. They're not going to get their gear that they paid for because of the family feud. There may be fighting on their land because of the family feud. They may have thought about marrying into this family, but now they can't because of the family feud. And those are just a few. So the idea of everyone having a Weregeld, a blood price, makes sense from the Germanic perspective because it's a way of squaring honor and justice without the need for a bloodbath, which is what the alternative would be. Second, the Danegeld. The Danegeld is what Saxon kings would pay to the Danish Vikings to have them stop fighting for a while. Even King Alfred paid Danegeld both before and after Athelney, before and after he was in that swamp. Paying your enemy not to kill you is like making a permanent arrangement with your schoolyard bully to give him your lunch money every day. It's not a good idea. But what it is a desperate play for time. When Alfred, after Athelney, paid the Danegeld, he paid it in such a way that was designed to give his fyrd and his aldermen and his fortresses and his beacon system and his navy more time to get strong. So that not if, but when war came again, that war would be won by the Kingdom of Wessex, later the Kingdom of England. However, bright light switch, please. The great poet of the British Empire, Rudyard Kipling, had a good wisdom about paying Danegeld, which he, being a poet, put down in this poem, which is called simply Danegeld. AD 980 to 1016, but Danegeld went well beyond that. It is always a temptation to an armed and agile nation to call upon a neighbor and to say, "We invaded you last night. We are quite prepared to fight, unless you pay us cash to go away." And that is called asking for Danegeld. And the people who ask it explain that you've only to pay him the Danegeld, and then you'll get rid of the Dane. It is always a temptation to a rich and lazy nation, to puff and look important and to say, though we know we should defeat you, we have not the time to meet you. We will therefore pay you cash to go away. And that is called paying the Danegeld. But we've proved it again and again, that if once you have paid him the Danegeld, you never get rid of the Dane. It is wrong to put temptation in the path of any nation, for fear they should succumb and go astray. So when you are requested to pay up or be molested, you will find it better policy to say, we never pay anyone Danegeld, no matter how trifling the cost. For the end of that game is oppression and shame, and the nation that pays it is lost. Patrick Henry said the same thing, famously in the American Revolution. Give me liberty or give me death. The state motto of New Hampshire, which is on all their license plates, living in Maine and traveling to and from Maine, I know a lot about New Hampshire. Their state slogan, live free or die. There's truth in that. You pay a bully to victimize you, and you're basically paying for a service. Like you pay for apps at the App Store. Hi, I'll be your bully. Why on earth would a bully, whether it's an individual in the schoolyard or a nation of Vikings, why the hell would they go away when you've proven that you're such a weak-willed wimp that you will pay them money to victimize you? The only way you get rid of a bully is to fight. In some way, shape, or form to hurt them. Why? Because bullies, in essence, are cowards. Bullies are like predators on the African savannah. Animals aren't interested in the great fights. They don't want to know who would win, a lion or a hippo. The hippo. Just telling you. Hippos are freaking dangerous. They're the most dangerous animals in Africa. And that's saying something.
A lion couldn't even fight through a hippo's skin.
No,
and then
exactly.
The hippo would just crush it right away.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not even close.
It's not even close. But, people aren't thinking about, oh, the lion, he's a predator. No. Hippos are little armored tanks of anger and hate.
Lions are also scared of elephants because they don't want to get stomped on.
Yeah, well, exactly. Apex herbivores are weird.
I've seen when hippos unhinge their jaws.
Yeah. No, it's hungry hippos. Ah! In any event, it was a game. What predators do is they seek out the old and the weak. It's the circle of life. Predators don't attack strong victims. They attack weak victims because they're not interested in a fight. They're interested in taking. Whether it's taking meat from herbivores or taking money from victim kids. You hit them hard. You hit them again and again. Even if you lose, you hurt them. Even if you lose, you hurt them. Because in hurting them, you demonstrate that you are not an easy target, and they will find someone else. It may be a little while. There may be a time of conflict, but you hurt them, and you hurt them, and you hurt them, even as you get hurt, until you stop them, until they go elsewhere, until you prove to them that every time they target you, they'll pay. Not you, they. So the Vikings don't respect the Normans, the Anglo-Saxons who pay them. They see it as an incitement to further raid. Now, the Vikings, as I said, spread out from Vinland on the island of Newfoundland in North America, all the way to Russia, the Ukraine, and Constantinople, and the Caliphate. There are Viking longships that raid Arab cities in Egypt at one time or another, which is kind of interesting. Vikings versus Arabs, Europe's two great enemies. But the King of France comes up with a different form of Danegeld that might work instead. Rollo is a Viking chief. And the King of France makes Rollo an offer. I will give you one of the most beautiful areas of France, which is saying something. As much as I don't like the French, France is a beautiful country. I will give you this peninsula that sticks north out of France into what they call La Manche, the English Channel. If you become my duke, so I'm the King of France, you will be the Duke of this land. Let's call it Normandy, land of the Northmen. You guys are Normans, Northmen. You have to become Christian, you and your people. That's given. But if you're my Duke, you can rule this beautiful part of France as yours. Just occasionally do what I say. Your real job as my Duke is to keep the other Vikings the hell away from France. That's your job. So, what the King of France is doing is accepting Vikings permanently into his feudal system, into his kingdom, as anti-Viking Vikings. Rollo and the Normans are going to be French lords. They're going to become Christians, and they're going to become like the Africanized killer bees of Dark Age Europe. They're going to combine the ferocity and advantages I've told you about that Vikings have with the high-tech organization of the Frankish kingdom, which is more advanced than the Anglo-Saxons, by the way. These Frenchified Vikings, these Normans, are going to become the superpower of Europe for about 200, 300 years. So Rollo accepts the cross, and Rollo's people accept the cross, and Rollo kneels before the King of France, who dubs him a knight and creates him a duke. There's a ceremony with the archbishop in Paris. And now a section of France has been given to the Normans, Normandy. Now the Romans tried this. Remember, the Romans accepted foederati, Goths and Germans, into their empire to defend it from other Germans. It's not a sign of strength that you do this. But the French do it better. And I think the difference is accepting Christianity. So Rollo of Normandy, for a couple of generations, produces this new thing, this Frenchified Viking, the Norman. Meanwhile, in England, despite the fact that Wessex and England had conquered the rest of England, there comes a moment around the year 1000 where the King of Denmark also becomes the King of England. His name is Canute the Great. He's a Danish king, not an English king, although he is King of England. King Canute, C-A-N-U-T-E, goes famously once to the sea. See, he rules both sides of the North Sea. He rules England in the west and Denmark in the east. And he is going to dare the tide, order the tide, command the tide. I am king. I am Canute. You shall not pass. He sits in a chair and the tide comes in and covers his feet, his legs, his waist. He learned something about humility that day. Canute goes to the sea. Now, what is England like in the years before the Norman conquest? Well, it's rich. It's not very powerful, which is a bad combination, but it's rich. Let me see. There is a record from that time called the Julian work calendar? Well, there's the Julian calendar, but this is a little bit different. Hold on. Here we go. Yeah, I should have done this before school, but got distracted. Maybe it's the Julius work calendar. Ah, good. Okay. So, okay, keep open image. Good. Oh, but it is, and I will show you how it is in a moment. But first, wait a second. That's different. Okay. So, the Julius work calendar is a Julian calendar, because that's what the Middle Ages used. Julian reckoning. And what it is a bit like a modern calendar in that it has drawings for each month. And these drawings are from the daily life of the people of Angloland, the people of England. And let's take a look, see if we can identify what's going on. So, January, it's the winter time, and it's the time of plowing. You're plowing up the fields, you're planting the winter wheat. You got the proverbial John the Plowman, and you've got somebody planting seeds behind, and you've got oxen pulling. You've got a really big, heavy plow. Why? Well, in the Mediterranean, they had wooden plows, which were fine for the weak, sandy soil of the Mediterranean. But in England, you got dark earth and rocks. Lots of dark earth and rocks. So having a mule pull a wood plow ain't gonna cut it. So they had oxen, teams of oxen, which are really, really strong, pulling iron plows through the earth, separating the earth, turning it over, making furrows. If you've never plowed a garden, even, you don't understand what an effort it is to plow the soil. You've got to break the soil, you've got to turn it over, you've got to get rid of the weeds, you've got to prepare it for cultivation. And when the earth is open and soft, then you plant the seeds, and you do so with care. February, pruning trees. So you go out into the forests. A lot of the buildings in England are made of what are called wattle and daub. Wattle and daub is a mixture of wicker wood and clay. You probably know what wicker is. Wicker used to be a popular substance to make lawn furniture out of. I just realized I haven't seen much wicker, so...
Didn't the 10,000 Immortals have the wicker?
Yeah, they had wicker shields.
Yeah.
So let's take a look. Good, thank you. Good memory. Let's take a look at wicker lawn furniture. Oh, for God's sake. Okay, where's a good picture?
Why is furniture so expensive?
Yeah, well,
Why would anyone buy it?
because it's somewhat comfortable and it's quite traditional.
Yeah, but on Craigslist you can get stuff for so cheap.
Then again, you have to trust Craigslist,
Yeah.
which I'm not willing to do. I don't trust Craig. I think he's a scum bucket, a slime ball.
Why is Craig a slime ball?
I just think he is. I don't trust him. Anyone with deals like that has got to be bent in my mind. So here's wicker. What it is woven sticks. They're woven sticks. That's the wattle. And the daub is sort of a clay mixture that's going to become solid walls. Not quite plaster, but a bit like it. And what you do is you make a wall, whether for a house or whatever, And so you make it out of wicker, and you cover it with this clayey mud that dries and becomes solid. That's wattle and dowel. So you need sticks to do that, and that's why you go pruning trees. That's the wrong picture.
Mr. Short,
Yes.
when it rains, would the clay get soft again?
Depends on how you make it. They mixed in lye and other things like that. Good question. Yeah.
Would it be hard enough for you to not just like break someone's
Oh.
house? Because I feel like it would be.
No, it's not. It's not armor plate. You can break somebody's house. You can dig through their walls. Yeah, it's like in the old days where they had thatched roofs.
Like
You
if you ran at someone's house real hard, you could just go right through their wall.
no, it's not that
I
bad
don't know
because
if
the
it's
wicker has actually surprising strength. But what you could do is dig a hole through the daub with a sharp iron tool or
Break
steel
the
tool,
wicker.
and then cut through the wicker. But that'll take you time. Meanwhile, the people inside are going to be stabbing you with spears and shooting arrows. Look, thatched roofs. Thatched roofs are not particularly sturdy either. They're basically a structure with grass woven over it. The grass is dried and mixed with mud. But if you want to jump onto somebody's roof and light it on fire or cut through it, you can do that. Anyway, so February is pruning trees so you can have the sticks for your wattle and dowel. March, breaking up the soil, digging, sowing, and harrowing. So in March, you're basically preparing for the summer harvest, and you're also harvesting the winter wheat. April, feasting, because the winter harvest is in. You can grow certain plants in England in the wintertime, and so in April you have a small harvest, you have feasting. By the way, see this belly here? That's a sign that there's some slight hungry times, because before the harvests in the springtime, you end up without enough food to eat many years. You don't see that belly in January or February. You see it in March, because people often have to go hungry for a few days or a couple of weeks in March before the harvest. But in April, it's feasting time. You've planted the summer harvest, and now we go to the next one. May, watching sheep. Now this is obviously not what farmers are doing. Farmers are weeding their fields and keeping crows away and stuff like that. But the shepherd's got to have some love too. So here you've got the shepherds. And you might think, that's the bestest job ever, being a shepherd. You get to hang out in the countryside, and all you got to do is watch your sheep. You don't have to dig in the fields. It's so much easier. Well, except for a few things. First of all, if anyone or anything comes after your sheep, you've got to fight them. A pack of wild dogs or a pack of wolves come after your sheep. You've got to fight them. You can't let them eat your sheep. Your life is over if you do that. Better for you to fight and get wounded or killed fighting wolves or dogs than to in a cowardly fashion abandon your sheep. You'll never recover from that. So a shepherd has to be physically brave enough to, a bear's coming and a bear's going to eat your sheep. Human versus bear. Bad odds for the human. But the shepherd has to try to defend the sheep. So, you're not the only one, though. So, what else does a shepherd have to do? Well, you got 100 sheep. Except one morning it's 99. What's one sheep? No. That's not your attitude. You find a way to secure the other 99 sheep, and then you go looking to track the one missing sheep. It might take you hours. It might take you days. You find out what happened to that sheep because you're responsible for all of them. Being a shepherd is actually really tough work. When Christ calls himself the good shepherd to his flock, he's not saying, I have it easy. He's saying, I care about you the way a shepherd cares about every one of their sheep and lambs. Ba ram you. It's a thing from the movie Babe, which, if you've never seen it, is a great talking pig movie. In some ways, even better than Charlotte's Web, and that's
Charlotte's Web. Hated Charlotte's Web.
Why?
Oh, it was
What's
so
wrong
bad.
with you? Don't you have a
Oh,
soul?
that dumb
What are you,
little,
suddenly a ginger?
dumb little spider, bro.
Oh, you don't like the
I
spider.
don't like the whole movie. I have the picture that killed him.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe you should see Babe and root for the
I have
cat.
seen that.
Okay, good. Okay, June, cutting wood, and again, it's more wattle and daub. It's also getting firewood for the coming winter. July, haymaking. And what do you see again in July? Bellies begin to blossom. Now, why would hungry people have bellies? Allow me to explain. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, because if you eat a lot and you eat a lot and you grow a belly, when you go for times without food, your body can cannibalize itself and use
Yes.
energy.
That's when normal cycle, feast and famine in the Middle Ages. In harvest time, you feast and you're building up a belly. But that's really not why. Let me explain. A normal person eating and drinking will pass through food through their system. Solids and liquids will pass through the gut and move gas through it also. When there isn't enough food, there isn't enough solid mass passing through your gut to move the gas through. You see little pictures of little starving children in Ethiopia or in Somalia or in some despair-ridden hellhole around the world. And you've got these little stick-fake people. Some of them are children, some of them are adults. You can see their giant knees and their little tiny legs above and below because they haven't had a decent meal in months. And they've got these giant bellies and they're hard. Well, what that is gas. The distended belly is a sign of real starvation because what it is gas that is not able to escape. The human body doesn't have sufficient muscle mass in the gut to push gas out without the help of a basic amount of solid food. When that solid food is not present, and that's what's happening to these people. In July, you see the bellies, and it's not fat, it's gas that they can't get rid of. Only when they start eating again. And so there are 2 times every year when there's hunger. There's the time in March before the harvest comes in, the winter harvest. And there's July and early August before the summer harvest comes in. And the worst one is the summer one. Because there's not as much winter wheat harvested. And winter crops in general, they're smaller. So you might go for a couple weeks without a decent meal. For what it's worth, everyone goes through this. Even the Lord in the castle, who presumably is rich, is on light rations. Even the priest, who gets tithed, is on light rations. Everyone in the community has feast time together. And everyone in the community starves together. Regularly, twice a year, as a normal part of life. So for us, if we were living back then, what would be abnormal is the thought of being able to eat good meals all year round. That's not normal. They would have to eat frugally most of the year except during a feast. Small meal, few vegetables, few meats, mostly grains. But during the hungry times, everyone goes hungry. And if the harvest doesn't come in the way you expect, that hunger could become starvation, famine, massive death. And everyone knows it. It's one of the things that makes medieval people so religious. The ever-present possibility of calamity and death. So in July, they're haymaking and they're doing what they can to bring in stuff for the animals to feed on in the winter. I used to do that when I worked on a dairy farm. And then in August, you've got the harvest. And so everyone's out in the field harvesting. Now there's obviously a third one of these. Let's see if I can find it. That does the last third of the year.
It's on Pinterest.
Anglo-Saxon Julius calendar. Whoop, is this it? Let's see. What month are we? We are September through December. Yeah, a smart teacher. Ah, this may be it. A smart teacher would have done this in advance. Yes. I'm not always a smart teacher.
Why are these all uploaded to Pinterest?
Why not? I don't even know what Pinterest is, but
It's like not for educational stuff.
who the heck cares? I don't limit my searches to educational sources because a lot of educational sources all say the same thing, and they're not always right.
It's like for it's like for outfit inspo.
In English, that means what?
It's like where girls go to get inspiration to dress.
Ah. In other words, for fashion tips.
I do that. There's a bunch of free crochet patterns and
Okay.
stuff, and I'm like, I need those. I can do it.
Look, I have no problem going somewhere that happens to have good information like this. Even if they have Star Trek and Doctor Who and memes, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah,
Hey! He's hating on Pinterest, but he loves Craigslist. What does that tell you? Huh?
You should go to Reddit.
No.
Okay, September. Hunting, pasturing swine. Now, let me tell you about pigs in Europe. Boars, wild boars, are among the most dangerous creatures in the European wilderness. Because wild boars, A, have no fear of man. They really don't. B, they're smart. Pigs are smart. Pigs are on average as smart as a smart dog. This is why in China there are places where you eat dogs and cats and keep pigs as pets, which sort of seems like the world turned upside down to people from Europe who keep dogs and cats as pets and eat pigs. Pigs are smart. They have no fear of man. And a wild boar is about the length of one of these tables. I mean the three-person tables. And they've got razor-sharp tusks. And you hunt them with a spear. Think about the guts that it takes to do that. Now, noblemen hunt boar from horseback. They have beaters go out into the woods. This is true for deer hunting and bird hunting as well. And this is still the way the European nobility hunts. They got a bunch of peasants and lower class people. They go out, hey, how you doing? Noise, 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 noise. And they drive the prey towards the hunters who are waiting in a blind. And as the prey comes out into the open, in modern times, boom, 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 boom. And in those days, they would go in. But boar hunting involves going into the brush, into the bushes, with a spear. In other words, to do boar hunting, it takes guts. It takes more courage to hunt a boar than it does to hunt a bear, or to hunt deer, certainly. Because you can predict what a bear is going to do much of the time. Boars are aggressively unpredictable. So, boar hunting in September. In England, until recently, they had fox hunting. And again, they'd have a bunch of peasants making noises, and they would drive the fox. And then you have the nobleman on horseback with hounds chasing the foxes, killing them. October, hawking. No, that's not. No, not that kind of hawking. Did he just make a spit joke? Yes, I did. Hawking is when you take a hawk. It's a predatory bird. It's a raptor. and you go riding with it, and the hawk is blindfolded. Why? Because you've raised that hawk from a young age, and you've trained it to do certain things. And when you see another bird that you want the hawk to take down, you unmask it and loose it, and the hawk goes up in the direction you toss it, and then it pursues the bird like a fighter plane going after a bomber or a transport, stoops on it, knocks it down, and then you've got a dog that goes and gets the carcass. It's the kind of, lazy man's way to hunt. You've got a hawk that does the killing. You've got a dog that does the retrieving. Where do you think Labrador retrievers come from? They come from the kind of dogs that bring your birds back. Yeah.
When I lived in Oklahoma, my brother saved like a baby hawk that fell out of its nest from our pool. And
from a fool or from a pool?
From our pool.
Oh, okay.
We had like an
pool.
He raised it. He would bring in mice.
Cool.
He eventually released it because it was illegal to keep hawks.
That's a shame.
But anytime he did like a call, it would come back.
Yeah. No, and hawks and falcons, they're often called by a guy whirling something around that looks like a stone, but it has a certain type of whistle. And each one is a little different. So different hawks would know the sounds of their different retrieval call. And they'd be brought back, and they'd come back, and you remask them. It takes a lifetime to train a hawk. Your brother did a really good job if the hawk did that. Yeah.
Do you think, is it legal to use a hawk to hunt birds?
Not in America, apparently.
Why?
At least not in Oklahoma. Because, I don't know, somebody would think it. Look, some people say, don't name your animals, and you shouldn't keep pets, and zoo animals shouldn't have names, because you shouldn't keep animals captive. They should all be wild and born free. Well, the problem with that is, unless we have certain animals in zoos, they're going to die. Not just because of man, but because of natural life. There are animals that we preserve in zoos that don't necessarily exist in the wild well anymore. But yeah, there are people.
If you think about it, it's kind of a good thing for the animal. They get to live in comfort. They get to live.
Yeah, well, they're animals. They're not people. It's not like slavery.
They'll probably get a dignified, comfortable death, and nothing dies peacefully in nature.
No, it gets eaten.
Yeah,
definitely, yes.
There is a petition going around. I saw this the other day for vegans who are like, we should train carnivores to not be carnivores anymore because they eat meat. And it's
for the love of
Wait, people or animals?
Animals!
Oh, okay.
Vegans like, we should teach carnivores to
Hey,
not
vegans,
eat meat.
start with grizzly bears. Do it personally. Make the world a better place by trying to train grizzly... and sharks, bull sharks, the most dangerous shark to humans in the world. Go into the water and use your empathy powers to train bull sharks not to eat other animals.
What are they going to eat?
They'll eat you. That's what they'll eat. Fish are friends, not food. Yeah, sharks who think that die slow, horrible, miserable deaths. Because nature designed sharks to be predators. Nature designed bears and us to be omnivores. We are omnivorous. And that means we eat almost whatever we want. Yeah.
You gotta give them a little pat on the head, and if they don't listen, you can flick their nose. And if they still don't listen, well, you're screwed.
Yeah, exactly. No, they'll flick your nose with their teeth as they swallow your head.
You have to train bears that also have children, like young cubs.
Yes. Because if you start young.
Yeah.
In fact, we should send. Never mind. Now we're dealing with the real critical race theory: how to turn animal predators into animal. That's insane. That's like the joke. Do you remember? I may have played it for you. It's a video of a radio show, and have I played this for you?
Is it Saturday Night Live?
No, it's not. It's a real radio program.
Oh, is it the deer crossing?
It's the deer crossing. A woman calls into a morning show and says, I've been trying to get the police to do something about this for years. And the radio guys, who are sort of humorous, say, well, what is it? Well, it's where the deer crossing signs are. I mean, the deer crossing signs are in some of the most dangerous places on highways. Why should we let deer cross on highways? Why should we let deer cross on narrow mountain roads? If we put the signs in safe places, like we should combine deer crossings and school crossings. That way it would be more safe. And the guy says, the deer crossing signs are to born people, right? And she just goes on. No, the deer will obviously go where the sign's on. We can control the deer. And she was completely serious.
Oh my.
No.
You need to play that.
This
I've
lady's
never heard it.
Just look it up. Deer Crossing Radio Show. It's hilarious if we have time. In any event. Okay. So, October is hawking. November is, what they're doing is they're gathering faggots of wood. What did he say? Faggots of wood. The word faggot, traditionally, is so bad. Means a bundle of wood. It's like the word gay. Traditionally means happy. Okay?
Okay.
A faggot of wood is a bundle of wood.
That's why some cigars are called
Faggots, yes. When you light a faggot on fire, you are lighting a bundle of wood or a cigar on fire. Words mean different things, you hateful homophobe. No, I'm trying to indicate to you the traditional meaning of words that have since, yes, in modern times, taken on different meanings. So they are gathering bundles of wood. So hateful. Yeah. December. Threshing and winnowing. This is dealing with the wheat. The thing about wheat, the thing you really need to understand is when you harvest it, it's a seed. It has a hard outer shell. You can't eat that hard outer shell. It's not good for you. Well, it's not great for you. So what you've got to do is break the seed open. But wheat seeds are little tiny. So threshing and winnowing are ways for people to break seeds open in large groups. It's like the difference between fishing with a net and fishing with a fishing pole. Winnowing and threshing are like fishing with a net. You're working with large groups of wheat seeds, and you're breaking them open, trying to get the wheat kernel, which is the entire nutritious part of wheat. And they do that in December. So, the Julius work calendar indicates a rhythm of the seasons that's never changing. In the English countryside, every year you go through a known and knowable routine of activity. It includes all the chores of a farming community, all the activities, including hunting boar, which is a sport for the noble. It's not a sport for common people. In fact, if common people go hunting on the lord's or the king's land, or if they hunt what are called the king's deer, all the deer are the king's deer. All the deer. Noblemen are allowed to hunt the king's deer. Commoners are not. They'll put your eyes out. For real. One of the reasons why the United States has such generous hunting laws is because one of the reasons the American Revolution was fought, it's a minor reason, but it's still there, is this notion that's in Britain that the king's deer are not to be hunted by everyday people. When British colonists come to the Americas, suddenly anyone who can take a deer down can take a deer down. And the thing about venison is it can be tasty if properly prepared. It's not as tasty as bear meat, and it's not nearly as tasty as antelope. Antelope is the best meat I've ever had in my life. It's like really fine steak, but better.
I ate a moose.
Moose is good. Yeah, I had moose meat tacos. Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Antelope?
Antelope. My brother-in-law is a hunter. He went to the Rocky Mountains, got a Rocky Mountain antelope, and it was tasty. Stop.
I want to have like a
That's different.
I want to have like the biggest hawk you could have, and like take them like goats and stuff.
Listen.
Like have them drag them off cliffs.
There you go.
Like,
Okay, what you want is what's called a rock. A rock, R-O-C, is a gigantic bird, or a giant eagle or something, like from Tolkien.
Yeah.
You know the eagles?
And I would have like a special metal like thing on my arm because they would be too big.
Oh yeah, no, they'd crush you. They would absolutely bang
some
you.
kind of like race on my rib cage.
Tomorrow, we are doing the Norman conquest of England And then on a Friday, you're probably having a quiz on the Dark Ages, and we will then get moving on into the High Middle Ages.
Isn't there like a goat eating raptor or something like that? It's like it's something that like it takes like baby goats and like drops them. It's like 80-pound animals, and it just like like you're like shepherds.
The answer is I don't know, but if they exist, I don't want to live near them.
No, it's
Bye.